أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار والفلك التي تجري في البحر بما ينفع الناس وما أنزل الله من السماء من ماء فأحيا به الأرض بعد موتها وبث فيها من كل دابة وتصريف الرياح والسحاب المسخر بين السماء والأرض لآيات لقوم يعقلون. وهو الذي جعلكم خلائف الأرض ورفع بعضكم فوق بعض درجات ليبلوكم فيما آتاكم إن ربك سريع العقاب وإنه لغفور رحيم. هو الذي أنزل من السماء ماء لكم منه شراب ومنه شجر فيه تسيمون ينبت لكم به الزرع والزيتون والنخيل والأعناب ومن كل الثمرات إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. وسخر لكم الليل والنهار والشمس والقمر والنجوم مسخرات بأمره إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يعقلون. وما ذرأ لكم في الأرض مختلفا ألوانه إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يذكرون. وهو الذي سخر البحر لتأكلوا منه لحما طريا وتستخرج منه حلية تلبسونها وترى الفلك مواخرا فيه ولتبتغوا من فضله ولعلكم تشكرون. وألقى في الأرض رواسي أن تميد بكم وأنهارا وسبلا لعلكم تهتدون وعلامات وبالنجم هم يهتدون. وعباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا سلاما. وابتغ فيما آتاك الله دار الآخرة ولا تنس نصيبك من الدنيا وأحسن كما أحسن الله إليك ولا تبغ الفساد في الأرض إن الله لا يحب المفسدين صدق الله العظيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Salams and peace. Thank you so much to Sidi Ahmed for that beautiful recitation. May Allah bless you and protect you always. As you can see, those verses were specifically selected for today's event. Inshallah, an opener for the conversation that we are going to have today, all being well. Salams, peace, and welcome to you all. My name is Sakina. I am currently content coordinator at the Green Deen tribe. And so on behalf of the tribe, a huge welcome to you all. I'm really excited about today's conversation. Today, inshallah, we'll be exploring being Black and Muslim in nature. And it is officially Black History Month in the UK. I'm sure we've got people from all around the globe, but October in the UK, it's a month dedicated to celebrate Black history. And of course, you know, we're not one of those people, let's celebrate Black history only once a month. You know, we're about celebrating Black history every day. Every day we celebrate Black history, of course, but this month is a great opportunity for us to really bring together some incredible individuals, get an insight into their journey and to learn a little bit more about, you know, the world of environmentalism through the eyes of Black Muslims. And so if you've been following us on our Instagram, you know, you've noticed that all this week we've had various different conversations and different reflections, which I've learned so much from. We're going to start, inshallah, straight away. We're going to get into the conversation straight away. Feel free to, inshallah, use the chat to communicate. If you can't hear, can everyone hear me okay? I know that's the typical Zoom thing to say, but I didn't check that everybody could hear me okay. So I'm going to assume that everybody can. All right. Inshallah, everybody can. So let me just start straight away by introducing our guests that we have today. We have, alhamdulillah, we've been blessed to have Sidi Ibrahim Abdul Mateen, who is the author of Green Deen, What Islam Teaches About Protecting the Planet. He is an activist, a leader, and has contributed greatly to the field of environmentalism. And for me personally, like, there's no Green Deen without Sidi Ibrahim Abdul Mateen. I'm also a poet, if anyone's wondering how I got those to rhyme. But anyway, so thank you so much to Sidi Ibrahim Abdul Mateen for being here and giving us your time. We also have the incredible Freedom Tariq, who I was going to attempt to say your last name, but I'm going to try not to because I don't want to butcher it. So please forgive me. We've got Freedom, alhamdulillah, who has been doing some incredible work in the UK. He is the founder of the Urban Equestrian School, which provides a space for children from inner city communities to have a connection to horses and really encourage them to seek out nature and to be in nature. I've literally already, as soon as I found out about Freedom, I went and ordered his book, Hood to Horses. And so we're really blessed to have Freedom with us today, and we're looking forward to hearing more from Freedom, inshallah. And finally, we also have Rabia Mali, who is our founder of the Green Deen tribe. She's also a community medical herbalist, and she's been working in nature for over a decade, for quite some time now. And Rabia focuses a lot on getting, allowing women from inner city communities, from disadvantaged communities, providing spaces and events for them to come out and sit and be in nature. So those are the three guests that we have today, alhamdulillah. Before I invite Freedom to come on, just to quickly run through some house rules. We've got our admin who is going to be adminning the chat. So if anybody has any concern or any questions, feel free to just use the chat. Feel free to use the chat to kind of communicate. I'm just allowing that option because I know it wasn't open before. So the chat is open. Feel free to use the chat for any questions. If you do have any questions as you hear our speakers speak, do put the questions in the chat. Use the chat for questions. And what we'll do, inshallah, once we've heard from all three, we'll then open up for questions. So as we're speaking, as they're speaking, if anything pops up, if you just put it in the question and then in the chat, and hopefully our admin will note it down, and we can answer those questions at the end of the session, inshallah. Also, I forgot to mention about our Instagram as well. If at any moment you want to share any of the conversations beyond these Zoom walls, then you're also more than welcome to kind of use to tag us at green_Deen_tribe or at the Rabbani Project, and that would be much appreciated. So we are going to, inshallah, start straight away. I'm going to introduce Freedom. It's really funny, and it's a bit really funny. I'm laughing already because I find it funny. But a couple of days ago, I actually had a dream about Freedom, and I know that sounds...
me this.
I know it sounds really strange, but it's not that deep. I know when you say, "Oh, I had a dream about you," it's like, "Oh yeah, it's going to be really deep," but it's not that deep. But I did have a dream, and it was funny. So I'm from East London. For those that are not from London, East London, some may refer to it as the ghetto, or as a place. It's a beautiful place, mashallah. But that's where I'm from, and so I had this dream that Freedom, you came. And you had this massive truck, and it was just filled with horses. And you came, and like, because I live in an estate, and so you were rolling up on the estate, and you came with these horses, and you dropped them off in front of my house. And then I woke up, and of course, I realized it was a dream and reality. But it's funny because in reality, that's essentially what you do. You know, subhanAllah, Freedom is somebody that has been working tirelessly and has done so much. I'm going to read from your bio before I bring you up, just because I feel like the people need to know about Freedom. So Freedom is the founder of the Urban Equestrian Academy. He is a respected member of the community, a public speaker, a published author, a presenter, actor, and an experienced equestrian specialist in the UK and the Caribbean. Freedom has vast experience in youth and community work. He is a fully qualified racehorse trainer and horse breeder. And so we are so blessed to have Freedom come up and just share a little bit more about your story and your journey. So let's welcome Freedom.
Yay! No, thanks a lot, Sister Rabia. Is that right, yeah? Thank you very much.
Sakina, but I can go Rabia too.
Sakina, apologies. Sorry, apologies for that. I think some of that information needs updating. Yeah. I don't know about the acting bit. That was going to happen, but it didn't actually quite happen. But thank you anyhow. Yeah, you're correct. My name is Freedom Tariq Zampaladis. I'm 41. And I've been involved with horses for over 20 years, closer to 30, over 20 years. So I'm the founder of the Urban Equestrian Academy, and the Urban Equestrian Academy is basically an academy, meaning an educational establishment where our core focus, our priority is equestrian engagement. So basically bringing those who have the least access to horses, ponies, giving them more access, basically. I set up the Urban Equestrian Academy simply because I learned all about horses in the Caribbean. I was born in Leicester, but I left Leicester when I was 14 years old. And my parents decided to take me and my family back to the Caribbean, back to Antigua. I'm half Jamaican, half Antiguan. So we went back to Antigua. I was 14 years old. I was always into animals. I was an animal kid. But I had an opportunity to actually work with animals, specifically with horses, when I went to Antigua. And that's because my uncle had horses, and just, it was the perfect opportunity for me to have access to something I never actually had access to. I thrived in Antigua in the ages of 14 and 19. I went from being a groom, working on my uncle's race yard, to actually taking over as his actual trainer. And I was 17 years old when I became his racehorse trainer. I got my license to train and went on to win many races, travel the Caribbean and again win many races. I decided to come back to England really for me to go to an equestrian college, like a horse school college, where I could get qualified, because though I was a racehorse trainer, it came through experience. I didn't have actual qualifications. So I wanted to get qualified around horses, which is what I did. But upon coming back to England and getting qualified, I encountered a totally different world. I encountered a world of white privilege, institutionalized racism, social isolation, a lack of diversity. And it really saddened me to the point that after, I would say, after 5 years of returning to the UK, getting qualified, in top jobs working with horses. I used to work for the ruler of Qatar at the time, Sheikh Abdullah ibn al-Thani. I think that's his correct name. I used to look after his horses. But after 5 years of working in the UK with horses, I fell out of love with the world of horses, simply because I wasn't accepted. And I was very lonely. It was, it just wasn't the same anymore. So I quit the world of horses and went back to doing what else I was good at doing, which was being notoriously bad at the time. It was only until I had my own children that I decided that it was such a shame that my own children would not have an opportunity to see the fantastic world I was part of and how good I was in that world, that I decided to get back into horses. And at that point, I didn't just want to do something for my own children. I decided that, I'd had enough of the UK's equestrian industry being predominantly white, or anyone who is of an ethnic or elected over here would probably do white. And my father being a revolutionary person, he was a founding member of the Black Panther Party over here. And he grew us up in a particular fashion, a particular way, where we were fearless. So I sought to tackle this problem of white privilege in the equestrian world by setting something up for us. And when I say us, I mean everybody who isn't part of that privileged world. People from disadvantaged communities, people from the BME communities, faith groups, even working white class people, Muslims in particular. One of the key things people always ask me, working in the industry that I work in, is why do I do it? It's not for us, it's alien, or people find it strange. But I always respond with a question, which is, because it's usually ethnic people asking me this, or when it is, what I respond with is, when you go back to your motherland, your home country, whether that be in the Caribbean, in Asia, in Africa, the Middle East. Do you not find that your own people are agricultural people? So why is it such a strange thing that are engaged in these activities over here? It should be normal. It should be normal. You know, we live in the UK and in the Western world in a very alien environment where we're stuck in the concrete jungle and we're forced to sometimes live in a block of flats or forced around each other without any green spaces, without any clean air. And then we wonder why we are dying from so many different illnesses or from stress and depression. And, you know, a lot of it is to do with the environment we've been forced to accept when we come to the West. Because again, you go back home, we don't live like that. We live like how white privilege lives over here in relation to the countryside and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So through urban equestrian, though it is all based on horses and so on, we also incorporate everything that complements horses. So you're talking horticulture, you're talking agriculture, you're talking forestry, you're talking farming, you know, basically nature. It's so important. I mean, with everything that's going on in the world right now, Corona and stuff like that, the lockdown has been tremendously stressful for many people, including myself. But I was quite lucky that with myself having horses, I was able to escape being locked down by being outdoors and riding my horses more or less every single day, galloping through the countryside in the clean air with my children. And it was a fantastic feeling. And I'm noticing now that the lockdown has been lifted, though it's coming back again, apparently. Never know what Boris is saying. Since the lockdown got lifted, we've had a huge increase in people wanting to become members of Urban Equestrian, wanting to send their children to Urban Equestrian, and so forth. So we're extremely proud of what we've achieved, where we are today. Just we are 9 horses of our book, 2 of which are extras. We have over 100 kids, young people, that come to our stables every single week and engage in activity, not just riding, but also equine care, yard management, and also the theoretical side of working with horses. We also have other projects linked to what we do through the stables in terms of our pony clubs. We have the club, we have an adult program, we have a teenage program. From spring, we'll be looking to launch our program called Horses, the Sunnah and Islam, which we piloted back in January of this year, which was extremely successful. Again, horses, they are Sunnah, you know, so I don't understand why something like what we've done hasn't really been done before or attempted to have been done before, because Sunnah, the type of blessing that comes from looking after horses, engaging with horses is incredible, absolutely incredible. So though it's been extremely hard for us in terms of establishing Urban Equestrian, I've never for once doubted that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will look after me and guide me through times to enable these fantastic, magical creatures to thrive, and for us as a community of people to thrive through them. There was a question that came. Urban Equestrian is based in Leicester. So yeah, we're based in Leicester. The intention is to franchise over the UK. So at the minute, we're based in Leicester with the intention to be in Nottingham, Birmingham, London, Africa, Jamaica, Middle East, everywhere. We're based in Leicester. I think that might be enough from me, maybe.
Thank you so much, Freedom. Inshallah, may Allah kind of spread you throughout the globe, because it's incredible that the work that you're doing, and we're looking forward to hearing much more from you. As I mentioned at the beginning, if there are any further questions for Freedom, please just do put them in the chat, and inshallah we'll get to them at the end. Thank you to Admin, who's just put Freedom's website. So if you want to find out more information about the school, Freedom School, then please do check out his website. And I know we've posted your social media as well. But thank you so much. We'll definitely, inshallah, come back to you at the end for more questions, if that's okay.
No problem.
Yeah.
And just again, my book, From the Hood to Hustle.
Book.
Yeah, that is available on Amazon, so go get that.
Yeah, I've ordered mine.
Yeah, man, missed that.
I'm looking forward to reading that. I'm really looking forward to reading that. I remember seeing, when I was just like Googling your name, a video came up, and it's such a powerful video, as you were on a horse and you were just literally riding through, I'm not sure where it was, but it was in a city. And it's such a strange image. You've got like, where was it?
Yeah, that's my hood, Highfields, man. That's my hood.
It was really powerful, but really strange, because it's like you've got this black man on a horse and he's just going through like all these buildings around, and it's something that you don't see. And so it was so powerful to look at. And honestly, may Allah bless you in everything that you're doing and support you. Inshallah, we're gonna move on, but we'll definitely come back to you at the end for more questions. Well, inshallah, we're gonna move to our next guest. We have Rabia Mali, who I have had the pleasure of knowing for about 31 years, I think. Right, we've worked together, we've lived together, we've shared a womb together, as in WAMB, not a room. We've also shared a room together because we are sisters. For anyone that doesn't know, we are sisters. We are blood sisters. And so, bless. So there's so much I can say about Rabia, but don't get me started. One thing that I will say though is that Rabia is someone that is constantly in service and constantly seeking to help people. She's not only a herbalist, but she's a community activist, and she's a creative, and she's an awesome sister as well, mashallah. She's also the founder of Green Deen Tribe. Let me just get to your bio, Rabia, so I can read that out so people know about you. So Rabia studied herbalism at the University of Westminster in 2011, and then traveled to Ghana, where she continued learning with a local herbalist, reigniting her love for nature with an understanding of the symbiotic relationship between nature and humans. Her work is centered around healing wounds of separation to nature through reconnecting communities to traditional medicine. Since then, Rabia has set up the Herbal Blessing Clinic, a community clinic that offers herbal medicine, community herbal workshops, retreats, foraging walks, and offers one-to-one clinic sessions at a sliding scale cost. And she also set up the Green Deen Tribe. So I'm going to introduce you to Rabia Mali, inshallah.
Thank you, Sakina. You had me a little bit worried there when you were like, there's so much I can say about my sister Rabia. I just thought, oh my gosh, please stop. Please don't say anything else. But no, thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for that, Brother Freedom. It's incredibly inspiring, mashallah. Yeah, really powerful work. And inshallah, may Allah increase you in that, because it's really powerful work. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As Sakina mentioned, yes, I'm Rabia. I'm officially a medical herbalist. It's something that I studied many 10 odd years ago or so, and that's basically that was one of the beginnings of my journey, particularly with my relationship with nature. I've always had an affinity to nature. I've always felt like, yeah, you know, I love the outdoors. I love like picking flowers and things like that as a child. And particularly I was very much interested in the healing aspect of nature, and that's one of the reasons why I went into why I studied what I studied. And I studied it actually in university, which I must say is it's such a blessing, alhamdulillah, because it means that because I studied in this institution, there was a little bit more respect for what I did, because this idea that for you to be respected and for you to have recognition means you need to kind of have studied in this particular institution, which is completely incorrect, particularly when it comes to learning about the earth. When I was studying herbal medicine, I can probably say I spent out of the many years that I was at the university, I probably spent maybe 3 days in total outdoors, like actually studying herbs, and that is incredibly problematic. But that's another conversation as to why we hold particular standards of education to be higher than others. So when I finally did graduate, I kind of had this really warped sense of who I was. I had this really ego-centered aspect of what my duty was. Like, I'm a herbalist now. I can go and heal people, and this is what I can do, and I understand the earth, and this is that plant, that is a dent. I had this real sense of self regarding myself and nature. And as Sakina mentioned, it's only when I spent a little bit of time in Ghana, particularly, that I was that something really just dropped in my head, and I'm really grateful for that, where I had this moment of humility this moment that shocked me into humility. It was very scary, but it knocked me off. It completely knocked me off my horse, so to put it. And it was this realization that I knew nothing, right? I knew nothing. And it was also this realization that particularly my relationship with the plants and relationship with nature had been through the lens of a Western understanding, which is very fragmented, very kind of this idea of separating everything. These plants are good for this is that, this is this, very much like that. And also any of the spiritual aspects that I had studied regarding herbal medicine had come through the lens of traditional Chinese kind of spirituality, Ayurveda, a little bit of kind of Buddhism, Taoism, so many different spiritualities that were, and even indigenous Native American kind of spirituality. All of that was what I was introduced and encouraged to look at through my medicine. And when I spent time in Ghana, it was there I realized, and it was Muslim herbalists that I spent time with particularly, which was really, really powerful. And it was there that I realized, like, subhanAllah, Allah had given everything that I was searching for with the spirit of nature and my connection to nature. Like, it was within my Deen, right? It was completely within my Deen. And it was so embedded in my Deen that I just couldn't believe that I was searching everywhere else to find it, but it was so embedded within the Deen. And that I realized my Deen is so green. And that's when I realized, I was like, wow, man, this is something. And there's so much power that can come into this. And my connection to nature completely changed. Instead of becoming an oppressor of nature and an ownership of nature, and very much in a way of my relationship in that way, it was more so looking at nature as a means of connecting to myself, right? Connecting to my sense of self, connecting to my ancestors and my descendants, but then also connecting to Allah and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's what this, for me, that's what I really wanted it to be all about. Every time I had patience, every time I would be in spaces, I wanted that to be a moment of connecting to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that was kind of where it started for me. And some of the work, how it led me, was to spend a bit of time working with other interfaith spaces, particularly something called spiritual ecology, which again has that beautiful idea of the nature, your spirituality and the earth being connected. And it was so beautiful. But again, it was very much through the lens of Native American spirituality and Buddhism as well, which, to be honest, I could relate. There's a lot of truth in it, but there's a constantly having to kind of change, like code switch, constantly having to be like, oh, okay, we have that aspect in Islam. Like, so you're constantly sitting there filtering through what is being said to kind of make it in context to your Deen. And it's from that experience that we piloted an opportunity of retreats, and this is where the retreats came from. This is the beginning of the tribe. Was we piloted a retreat for Muslim women, and we took them out into nature. And we spent time in dhikr, we spent time in connecting in meditation, using the Quran as a means of connection as well, and connecting to each other. And it was from that experience that the tribe actually came. The tribe created from this one group. The first group that we took out, I think there was about 10 of us. And it's from that group of 10 women that this tribe has kind of grown, subhanAllah. And that was 4 years ago. And each year since then, we've taken 2 to 3 different groups of women each year out into different parts of the UK and doing nature connection and doing Green Deen retreats. And the biggest thing that we realized from this space was that although we didn't intentionally, I must say, we didn't intentionally make it a female-only space initially, but that seemed to be what was being called from us, that we could hold space for Muslim women. But what we realized was the uniqueness of having these spaces where our spirituality and our interest in healing and our interest in nature could come together. And we could use this as a moment of collective healing, and we could use this as a moment of really building relationship to the land, like building relationship to the earth. Because one of the things we realized, particularly with the Muslim women that we were working with, some of them are in a city, some of them are not, but it was the similar narrative, similar to what Brother Freedom was saying, is that once you start to step out of the inner cities, there's this feeling of you are no longer home. You know what I mean? Like you are in somebody else's territory, and you're very cautious about being in those spaces. It's kind of like, can I cross that? Can I go across there? What will happen if I go there? Will I get lost? So that constant that constant feeling of not knowing, and that constant feeling of tension being out in nature, particularly the countryside, the British countryside, meant that for many Muslim women, for many of the women that we worked with, being out in nature was a very rare thing, right? And if they did be out in nature, it was to climb, I don't know, Mount Snowdon, or do a charity. We have this ongoing joke that, you know, particularly British Muslims and Mount Snowdon, like there's like this connection. Like we always climb Mount Snowdon. I have no idea why, but there's always an opportunity to climb Mount Snowdon. So other than those moments, there wasn't we didn't have this time of connecting to the land. And so there was never ever this sense that this is where we belonged. And even like I was speaking, even in our language, like we say it a lot, like back home, right? So this has never been our home. And we've always looked, and that like reinforces this feeling of us not being of being other. And so when we gather together as a group of women, we gather with an intention of, okay, we might feel uncomfortable, but we're together as women, and we're going to be walking these lands, right, together in our hijabs or in our attire, but then also in our black or brown skin. We're going to be walking these lands together. And although some of us might feel a bit uncomfortable, we're together, right? And on top of that, not only are we going to walk these lands, we're going to walk these lands in a state of dhikr, right? We're going to walk these lands in a state of mindfulness. So we've come onto these lands and we're making this land our masjid, right? Which means that there's an ownership, there's a sense of we belong here because we've made this space into our masjid. So people can't come for us and say anything because we're like, no, excuse me, this is we've created this, you know, and this land, this earth here, this belongs to our divine, and we're honoring it by honoring him on this land. And I remember that only because I remember a couple of times when we've been walking, and you have the lovely, we've never had too many problems, subhanAllah, but you always have that, what, I don't know what accent I'm about to do, I should probably stop, but you have that feeling of like, oh, you know, what are you guys doing here? Like, it's really nice to see your kind here. Are you guys, we had one time, are you guys refugees? Are you asylum seekers? And we're like, no, mate, we're from East London. Like, we're proper born and bred East London. And it kind of gives us that sense of belonging. And I think that's something that we really harness, like we really nourish that. But one of the most powerful things about the tribe is particularly what's come from the tribe, because this could have just been a separate retreat, like a bunch of us go, we have a good time, we do dhikr, we pray together, we eat together, we forage, we do medicine walks, we do like I said, dhikr walks, we talk about Green Deen using the incredible Green Deen book, like we can, that can just be it, right? And for a lot of us, that is it. But one of the things that is incredibly powerful about this tribe is, from these different retreats that we've done, we've had this inspired these women to kind of go back into their communities and create these pods of growth and these pods of movement. So from the retreats that we've done, I think in total maybe we've gone through, we've had maybe about, I would say about just about 100 women altogether have gone through different parts of our retreats. And from there, we've had ladies go back and do like set up tree planting groups. We've had women that have done like mindful walking, dhikr walking in their communities, ethical iftars, film clubs that are kind of honoring Green Deen themes, and ethical swaps, and subhanallah, like book clubs and things like that. And that's what really kind of makes this grow, because it's those little seeds that turn this into activism. And I say that because to me, activism can look like different things to different people. And of course, you have the activism when it comes to kind of policy change making and making changes within our education and in the systemic kind of activism. But also what we also have on top of that, you have those that want that can march upon the streets and kind of bring attention to some of the issues. But I'm also very aware that there's those amongst us that those aren't our calling in our form of activism. And particularly with women, what I'm finding is there's a really strong power of ripple effect and starting from the grassroots. So the changes that are being made in a lot of these homes and a lot of these communities are sustainable changes, because it's going to be affecting those that have children, be affecting their children, and it will grow, or their communities. And it's from there that I realized that this is a form of activism. You know, these are Green Deen activists. These women are Green Deen activists. And I think that's where basically, that's what we're doing now as a tribe. And now as we speak now, obviously this year, we weren't able to actually go out into the countryside, but we're exploring ways of still connecting to nature, because one of our beliefs is that although to experience the wilderness is very powerful, because there's such a presence of Allah there, nature is around us all the time, and there's that we are able to connect to nature in various ways, and we're able to kind of connect to nature from our homes in East London, particularly now with lockdown. So inshallah, we're hoping to continue that and to continue to grow and build the conversations that we're having as well, inshallah ta'ala. But yes, I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I really, really do appreciate that, mashallah. May Allah bless you. I loved the last bit that you were talking about, which kind of leads us really nicely onto our final speaker, where you were talking about, you know, going out in nature and just making it your mosque, you know. And just because I'm a fangirl of Sidi Ibrahim Abdul Mateen, I'm actually going to quote something. It reminded me of what was in the Green Deen book, which is, "The earth is a mosque and everything in it is sacred," which I think is really beautiful, and is definitely something that the Green Deen tribe has used as one of its principles. So thank you so much, Rabia. May Allah bless you. We are going to now move on to our final guest. Just a reminder, if there are any questions, feel free to just pop them in the chat, or any comments or anything like that. And at the end, we'll go through them, all being well, inshallah. So next up, we have Sidi Ibrahim Abdul Mateen, who is, you know, I would say like the father of the Green Deen movement. He is somebody that has been involved in this work for over a decade, mashallah. And I always remember when I first came across the Green Deen book, it was so fascinating to read, because I was reading about nature, and it was in a language that I actually understood. It was in a language that I could relate to, which was really powerful. And then I found out that Sidi Ibrahim was actually Black, and I was like, what? This is crazy. And it's strange, because sometimes all you need is somebody that looks like you in a space to make you comfortable in that space. And I feel the work that Sidi Ibrahim has done that for so many people. And alhamdulillah, we're really grateful that he's here with us today. Just a little bit about Sidi Ibrahim Abdul Mateen is that for the past 10 years, I'm sure it's much longer than 10 years now, Ibrahim has been a passionate voice for transforming our pollution-based way of life to one that prioritizes our planet and its people. He is author of the book Green Deen, What Islam Teaches About Protecting the Planet. Ibrahim's dedication to the environment is rooted in his Deen, his religion of Islam. He is an environmental policy consultant and has worked with Green for All, Green City Force, Interfaith Leaders for Environmental Justice, the Prospect Park Alliance, and the New York City's Mayor's Office of Long-Term Planning and Sustainability. There's probably so much more to add on to that, but I'm going to hand it over to Sidi Ibrahim Abdul Mateen, inshallah. Oh, can you not unmute? Oh, sorry. let me sort that out. Just give me one
Great.
second.
I'm here.
Great.
Can you guys hear me? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be with you guys. It's really funny in some ways, obviously. So I'll give you guys a little bit of history. I was raised, my mom and dad, my mom converted to Islam. I'll just peel it back for a second. My mother, she became Muslim. She took Shahada on her own. She's a black girl from Brooklyn, read about Islam and took Shahada on her own. And she ran to go find where the Muslims were. And she went to a masjid in Manhattan and discovered the incredible racism that was at play. And people were like, more rude to her, more mean to her. And this is, mind you, this is in the 60s in New York City than she had ever experienced. So she was like, well, where are the black Muslims? And she found the Nation of Islam and the folks that were in that community. She didn't believe in the Aqidah of the Nation of Islam, but she found the fellowship of the Nation of Islam. And my mom and my dad had been actually a Black Panther and was making a transition. And he also came to the Nation of Islam. And so I always say that we were experiments and that our parents had no idea what the heck they were doing and had no clue what on earth they were doing trying to raise kids Muslim in the United States, or just in general, just raise kids Muslim when you had been raised, when you had been other traditions. But the things about my parents' traditions, one is that my father grew up in the city in New York City, but he also grew up a lot and he would go down to the family land in Virginia. And my mother's side, they were cattle ranchers in Nebraska after slavery. And so we were very much like outdoors folks. So I grew up, yes, we lived in the city, but we were always outside and we were always going up to the woods. And that the hadith from the Prophet ﷺ around that anywhere you may be at the time of prayer is a place of prostration, the earth is a masjid, is an idea that was imprinted upon me very early by my father when we were in the woods and in nature. For me, this sort of road to being in this conversation with these people right here comes from being connected to social justice movements and organizing and activism efforts. In 2001, actually, a group of us published a book that was a database of youth organizing and activism all over the United States. It was a database and a searchable book that you could find people. It's a networking tool for organizers and activists. As a part of that, I met lots of people doing lots of different work. As fast forward a couple of years, and we're in the midst of, a lot, and I had been supporting organizing and activism through similar means, or convening people, facilitating conversations. We were sort of building a movement, and I connected with a lot of people that are now sort of doing things in movements and not in interesting ways. But one of the things that happened was around the election of Barack Obama, there was a swell of organizing around like recognition about the dangers of climate change and recognition about the potential opportunity if we made a shift and started to recognize that we could transform what happens. And we could also use that momentum of transforming our relationship with the planet to sort of creating new industries and new opportunities. And so that whole green jobs frame came up. And part of the spaces that I was in, which were very overtly political, was in trying to find a way to translate the conversations we were having in those spaces to the conversations that I was having with Muslims. And then as I started to look for the Muslim community on this, I just started seeing all these amazing folks that were doing amazing work, that were using their Islam to connect with their ecological framework. So I was like, whoa, it's here, we got it. So I started in my organizing work, started finding Muslims just to connect and just to be anchored and grounded with that. And part of that work, so then I went and I pitched it to this publisher, and the publisher famously, one person famously said to me, "Muslims don't read." I thought that was hilarious. I was like, really? Okay, cool. There's a thing called the Quran, by the way. So that was interesting. One thing that, well, what that said to me was that it wasn't so much that I had what they said basically was like, we need a one voice with this. So I had tried to get people a book to say the voice, to collect all these voices and put out some kind of statement with a collection of essays. But what it really turned into was, let's put out a book with my voice that captures all of those. So I was telling stories about Muslim Americans that were, and some outside the United States as well, that were looking through at water, waste, energy, and food, and using principles within Islam that help them understand their relationship to that. So that's just a structural for that, right? So that's just how that book came about. Really, with the people that I was speaking to were Muslims that were as consumerist as the next person, and as materialist as the next person, and as part of the problem as the next person, to the environmental community that was seeking to find allies and connect with folks, but using primarily secular language that didn't really connect. So I was trying to use it as a translation tool. And then to folks in the interfaith community that were sort of trying to find ways to connect and have a conversation on interfaith conversation, and not have to talk about what's your idea of God, or what's your perspective or perception of Jesus, or anything like that. We don't have to get all into all of that, because it's going to be more difficult to have substantive conversations. We all live on the earth. What are we going to do? I wanted it also to speak to be read by someone who's 8 years old and someone who is 80 years old. So I gave you like the structure for that. So since then, I've worked at the Mayor's Office of Long-Term Planning and Sustainability, working on infrastructure policy for New York City for looking into the next 100 years. Now I do consulting in that same field. I essentially have a resilience practice where I advise governments, nonprofits, and some corporations on how to improve what they do, how to increase stakeholder management. I work with developers, and I work with huge entities sometimes to try and help change their procurement practices so that when they buy non-toxic materials. I'm on the board of the International Living Future Institute, which basically has the most stringent green building standards in the world. They've built a building in Seattle, and to their standard, that's where they have composting toilets up to 6 stories, completely off the grid commercial building in an urban setting. And there's more buildings like that popping up all over the world. So I joined that board specifically so that Muslims and Black people were part of that conversation. I'm also on the board of an organization called it's the Land Trust in the United States, but there's a specific New York advisory board where we basically identify land and make sure we preserve it for public use. So we create parks, playgrounds, like in areas in upstate New York where there's like posted line that tell people that they can't be there. But, like someone might own the land and they say, you can't trespass, but no one's using it for anything, and there's no parks and there's no open space. So we've carved out 60-acre parks and spaces like this for people to enjoy, so that people can enjoy natural spaces. The work that I do now is about how can I use my relationships, my understanding of New York City, my understanding of the way policy works, the way the way government works, to sort of be useful and add value to things that are really good and that are healthy and halal, to stay completely away from anything that would make me feel uneasy or uncomfortable. So that's the needle that I thread. And then so that's the general thing. That's the opening that I'll say. I do want to make a quick point about, and actually when we get into the next question, the question period, I can answer that question. So I'll save that for now. Oh, and I'll say this, that I'm obsessed with, I've also done a lot of outward bound, a lot of outdoor hiking and camping and climb mountains. One year when I was like just, young Ibrahim, I lived outside more than I lived inside. I literally physically slept outside more than I slept inside, because I was hiking and camping and, backpacking my way across the United States. I've done education with young people where we've done, like I did for Outward Bound, had week-long camping trips with middle school kids. So I've done a lot of like hands-on environmental work with young people in the natural world. My dad still to this day hikes anytime he needs to be, you know, any day, almost every single day of the year, he's out somewhere, we're in the woods. And we as a family are like, when it gets to be the most brutal, most gripping, coldest day of the year, we get out into the woods and we get our gear on, because my family, just to give you this context as I wrap up, is partially native to this area, right? To the upstate, to the New York area. So we have, and then we can talk about that in the next thing about environmentalism definition, because we are Onondaga, which are part of the Iroquois Confederacy, the Iroquois Nation, 5 Nations, which is a democratic government that existed before the white colonizers came. That was a really amazing government. There's a deep connection that me and my father and my family have to upstate New York and to nature, that I knew and noticed and understood when I was very little, that I could wake up and understand what the weather was going to be. I could be perfectly still and I could walk through the forest, and I understood everything about what was happening around me. So that's the dynamic of being in America and having been mixed with Native American, African, and also European, is that we're really uniquely of this place at this particular moment in time. So just offering that as well. And I definitely I have a lot more to say about sort of notions of identity, indigeneity, when we talk about some of this other stuff. And then I can also critique capitalism whenever I want to, whenever you want me to.
No, we do. We want you to. Thank you so much. Honestly, thank you. Firstly, which I find like so fascinating, is that it's so interesting that you started off talking about your mother, who you said came to Islam, which is very, very similar to myself and Rabia, where, you know, we're children of converts, reverts, whichever word you want to use. And for our mother, it was that same journey where she actually she traveled to East Africa, and then she became Muslim, but she took her Shahada. It was just her by herself. She went through the Nation of Islam, and then of course she found herself with Sunni Islam. So it's really interesting that was a very, very kind of similar story. And then you mentioned about obviously the Black Panther movement, and how Freedom also mentioned that as well. So the connection between us all, you know, we're not only just Black and Muslim, there's so many other connections as well. I'm going to, inshallah, invite Freedom and Rabia I'm just going to spotlight both of you so that we have you on screen. As I do that, if there's any questions, please do put them in the chat so that we can put them to our speakers. I'm also interested to know where everyone is tuning in from. It'll be lovely, because I think it is important to recognize that, of course, the experience in the UK and in America, it's going to be very different. And I don't know, personally, I find sometimes the conversation around, you know, nature and green Deen, I find like, mashallah, the Americans, you're all on point. Like you've got organizations, you've got this and you've got that. And I think in the UK, we're very new to that. And so I do want to recognize that we do have two very, very different, you know, histories, two very different.
I don't know. I would push back against that. I think y'all are hella organized, and Americans are a hot mess. We're like the rest of our country.
No, I agree. Americans can be a hot mess. Yeah, definitely. But
I want my sons to go to Freedom School, and I'm a little frustrated it's not in New York. So that's what's up. But you know what? But we don't need it to be, because y'all, we don't even need to be here.
No, I think, mashallah, the Muslims, when it comes to nature in America, wow, you've really kind of headed, and we take a lot from you know, your experiences and your stories, and we're learning a lot in the UK. It's great to see that we've got people, Germany, we've got Netherlands, I guess, Netherlands, we've got Norwich, we've got Germany, Minnesota, Maryland,
Turkey, someone from Turkey
as well, Leicester, we've got someone representing Freedom's city, Northwest London. Did I see East London's Robbie? I thought there was another East London. So it's great to see that we've got a mixed Germany. It's great to see that we've got a nice mixture of people coming from different parts. Manchester, Bristol, Northeast London, yes, which is great. Alhamdulillah, welcome to everyone. So we are going to just begin, inshallah, the session where we have our Q&A. I know Sidi Ibrahim is going to be back shortly, but we're going to start, inshallah, if that's okay. I'm just going to make sure that Freedom and Rabia is muted. If anyone does have any questions, please do put them in the group. We've also got Salam's neighbor and former Aya colleague. I think that's Amin, I think it's somebody else. So yeah, welcome to you all, inshallah. If there are any questions, as I keep repeating, please do put them in the chat and we'll put them to the speakers okay, good, alhamdulillah. All right, so the first question that we're gonna start with is, as we've titled this Redefining Environmentalism, I think it's probably best to just start off with what is everyone's definition of environmentalism, and of course, what aspects, or are there aspects that actually need to be redefined? And I'm going to put that to Rabia first, if that's okay, and then we'll come to Freedom, and then we'll go to Sidi Ibrahim, if that's all right. So just to repeat that question, what is your definition of environmentalism, and are there aspects that need to be redefined? Do we need to redefine them? So we'll go to Rabia, then we'll go to Freedom, and then we'll come to Sidi Ibrahim, if that's okay. Go for it, Rabia.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I can only define it to what it means to me. I don't know. I'm not like, yeah. Okay, cool. Because I was like, I can't give you a textbook or Wikipedia version of that. But to me, the current form of environmentalism is basically us stepping into the role of stewardship and the role of understanding that everything in creation is connected. And having that understanding that everything in creation is connected because it's a creation from Allah. And that role that we've been given to steward, to be a representative, means there's an aspect of accountability for us. And for me, that's what environmentalism is me honoring my purpose in this great system, this great harmony, this great beauty that Allah has created, me honoring that role. And that role is one, to worship Allah and to love the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but then also to honor the creation, and that includes us as humans, but that also includes the plants, the animals, and trees, and trying to live a life that honors that. Inshallah, that's what it means to me. I think the aspects that we're trying to reclaim in that question is, I feel like the current norm of what environmentalism is, it takes out God, right? It takes out the spiritual aspect. It takes out the sense of there being something other than human. And I feel like the current form of environmentalism is very like human centered. It's kind of very much like, okay, what are we doing? What can we do to change it? How are we going to benefit? Okay, how are we benefiting from the earth, and that's it. It's not kind of like another way around, which is how's the earth benefiting from us being here, you know what I mean? And that's, for me, that's the biggest part of it. That's the biggest part, is that they've taken God out, and the other part is also because of the history that we have of colonization and greed. There's huge aspects of traditional aspects of earth connection and knowing how to steward the land has also been taken out of our current state of environmentalism. And so that's why, for me, it looks very white middle class at the moment, and that's something we want to reclaim as our own as Black people.
Thank you, Rabia. Should we go to Freedom next? So we're just answering the question: what is your definition of environmentalism, and does it need to be redefined?
Yeah, I mean, environmentalism, based on what Rabia was just saying. To me, I just have to go back to one of my favorite ayats in the Quran, where it basically just goes on to talk about how we have been placed on this earth as vicegerents. You get me? Yeah? So we're vicegerents of this earth, you know what I mean? And basically, how we look after this earth is how the earth is going to look after us. you know? And again, if I put it into the context of us in the UK, I'm just cooking at the same time as doing this. All right, keep me moving around, that's how I'm doing it. Okay, apologies. I agree in terms of what Sakina, what you were saying, you know, the UK, in terms of Black people, Black Muslims, Black people, and being at one with nature, we're way behind the USA. Way behind. You know what I mean? In the USA, they have equestrian Black communities that have a whole history of the Black cowboy. You know what I mean? In terms of being engaged with horses and stuff like that. But over here in the UK, we don't have anything at all like that. Nothing at all. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to create a legacy for us as Black people being involved in horses over here in the UK. So what I'm intending to do right now is a permanent change, not just a flash in the panting, but a permanent change where it's normal for us to be seen as riding horses, engaging with horses, working in these industries, in these fields. The same goes to agriculture, horticulture, in terms of ethnic minorities. Us as Black people being in these industries, we're not really there in the UK. You know what I mean? Everything that we're engaged in over here in the UK tends to be in the norm. You know what I mean? In terms of what people see as jobs and industries. So just going back to environmentalism, it's understanding that, you know, we are custodians, we are vices. It's our duty and our job to look after animals, to look after nature, to look after the planet. And because we've digressed so much away from that, that's why you see a lot of what's going on in the world going on. You know what I mean? Because like, I think Rabia was saying that, you know, we take from the planet for our own benefit. But what do we actually give the planet for the planet to thank us? You know what I mean? That's a really good way of looking at it, because you probably could count on one hand what we give to the planet in a positive light. You know what I mean? I don't really think there's much, you know what I mean? So I think that's a really, really important question in terms of, I think for humankind, for mankind, you know, what are we giving the planet? What are we realistically really doing for the planet? Apart from the government telling us that they're doing this and doing that regards carbon footprint and emissions and all the rest of it, what are we actually doing as humankind collectively to try and please our planet? And by pleasing our planet, we're pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, thank you so much, Freedom. Thank you. We're gonna go straight to Sidi Ibrahim.
So I kind of put this in a couple of things. I think if any of you guys remember the beginning of Mos Def's first album, where he says hip hop is some giant living off in the hillside, and he kind of goes into this rant about that. And I kind of think of the word environmentalism in the same way. I think it's like a passe word and it needs to be thrown out. I'll say why. Is that we as human beings, there's been some basic things that we need to do every single day. We need to drink water. We need to go to the bathroom, right? So that's, how do we get water? How do we get rid of our waste? How do we manage all of those systems that do that solve that problem? So if you take a human being from the beginning of time, they will have the same basic problems. The minute you plop them out of BC, whatever, they're going to come here and be thirsty. They're going to need to use the bathroom. They're going to need some food. Those are some basics, what I call persistent human problems. You can add on to that, how do we get from point A to point B? You can add on to that, how do we have the electricity or the energy or the power to do what we need to do? Those are some persistent human problems. So my argument is basically that throughout the human history, we've always had these same problems. So the question is, how do we solve them at certain scales? So if I'm going to get water for me, for my family, that's fine. For me and my neighborhood, my community, it changes. You move up the scale and you start to recognize that some problems people need, everyone needs to solve those problems. Every single person on the planet Earth needs to solve those same problems. So what our tradition in Islam does is basically give some structure around how do you solve those basic problems. So water in the Islamic context is not something that is that you can charge money for. That's everyone should have access to it. So when I think, so the way we think of environmentalism is the same way that European colonized mind thinks about environmentalism, is that it separates us from this thing. No, we're actually physically in it, right? So just to push back against what you said, Freedom, we actually are part of the biodiversity. So for us to be able to, for the earth to heal, we actually can be actively helping it to heal and regenerate. That's our responsibility. We actually have that power in us. We're actually vital to the earth functioning in that way. Now, going to the indigeneity conversation. So we as, right, so part of the colonial project that the Europeans executed successfully, to their perspective, was that they disconnected us from the natural world. Not only did they disconnect us as the people that they colonized, but they also disconnected themselves. So even the idea of what is indigenous is absurd. So I'll tell you this. The first time I went to Europe, I went to Brussels, and I was so excited. And then I went to Paris, and I was so excited. UK, clearly I'm not good enough yet to get to the UK. But the first time I went to Paris and Brussels, I was like, wow, I'm in a place where white people make sense, where white people are indigenous. So I was like, let me eat French onion soup. Let me have a croissant. Let me enjoy myself. Because when I'm in the United States, I see cobblestone streets. That does not make sense here. But over there, it makes perfect sense, right? So this idea, so the whole colonial project disconnected white people from understanding that they have a relationship with the land. So environmentalism is a passe framework for me because it's still rooted in a context of extraction. So now this is the final thing I'll say. It's that extraction, right, as a tool used to take people out of a continent, used to rape people, right? Patriarchy, raping people, that's extraction. Extraction used to take things out of the earth and use them. Also used now to take our data, extracting data. So this whole extractive orientation to capitalism, to taking things versus a regenerative one. How do you heal people? Us. And we need to heal. Part of our healing is us physically going into the natural world. That's different than environmentalism. That's just us going back to this natural state. So with Brother Freedom and Sister Rabia, this sort of relationship with the animals, relationship with the plants, our relationship with all of those things is part of that conversation. That is really exciting conversation to me, that we can actively, and then yesterday I think you guys had a conversation with Brother Ramiz Kent. So it's thinking through, how do we heal scarred land? How do we regenerate lands that have been hurt through war? That's our charge. Islam gives us a blueprint for having what a Native woman in the United States once said, for renegotiating our relationship with the earth.
I feel like you've just put that question out there, and I would love to hear a response from Rabia. Yeah, go for it, from Rabia and Freedom in regards to that. Go for it, Rabia.
I don't want to answer that question. I want to ask a question. Sorry, because as we're speaking, I'm realizing, we've mentioned about the difference between our Black experience, myself and Freedom's Black. In actual fact, all three of our experiences are going to be completely different, because Brother Freedom was mentioning he spent a lot of time back home in the Caribbean. And I think I really am interested when it comes to connection to the land, right? Because as humans, that's how Allah has created us, to be connected to the land that we're on. And one of the things I did mention at the beginning, and even Freedom, you were saying, once you come back over into this land as the UK, there's a disconnect. And like Sidi Ibrahim was saying, that's been years and years and years. And particularly in this country, that's something that was done firstly to working class people, when they did the enclosures and they stopped working class people being able to access land. And then it made it very easy to do it to people of color. But I'm intrigued as to what the difference is when it comes to being upon lands where, particularly in our land, this land here doesn't necessarily have the physical history of as much as the physical history of enslavement, that the Caribbean and the Americans have, because that's where it happened. A majority of what was happening happened in the Caribbean and happened in the Americas. So even when I go to the States, like straight up, whenever we've been, there's places we're walking and I'm like, I can't believe that there's so much, it's so obvious what's happened on these lands, and you can almost feel it. When I spent time in Jamaica, it was the same thing. You can see it in the names of buildings. You can looking at trees and you're like, that could have hung my ancestor, you know what I mean? And I'm just trying to, I would love to hear kind of what that experience is and how that makes it different when it comes to us feeling at home, right? Because ultimately we want to feel at home, and how that impacts you as an American, Sidi Ibrahim, and particularly from also from Sidi Freedom, from Brother Freedom. Like what does that do when you enter a land and there's that clear history and that clear blood, and then you have England, which, you know, as per normal, you know, we the history of this land is that you always do it in somebody else's back garden, you know what I mean? Like we've benefited financially a lot from it in this land, but we don't have the land itself doesn't have that history, if that makes sense.
Can I jump in on this? I have a quick thought about it, is that one of the things that we not joke about a lot, I think that first of all, for the history of, if we're going to reverse what has happened or sort of begin to heal, first of all, like all of the institutions that help facilitate the slave trade, and I'll put in the chat a really interesting couple of links about the slave trade, which is a time-elapse tool of ships that slave traders took just to kind of make it look real for people instead of just like a theoretical thing about what happened. This shows you how, like, what the slave trade meant. It was an enterprise, a massive, huge organizing capital, a lot of capital, a lot of money, a lot of people for centuries, longer than any of us can even think about in our family stories. Maybe not all of us, but some of us. So just to put that in context, so everyone needs to do some apologizing, some giving back. The banks in the UK need to basically not exist anymore. The United States government needs to apologize and institute reparations. We need to be given those land allotments that we require, that we should have to help us start that regenerative process. So that's just one framework. And then the idea that, so for me, a lot of folks in this movement who believe in reparations have talked to Native folks in the United States and said, what do we need to do? One of the things that we've been pushing was maybe white people need to go back to Europe. Just go back. And all the other people, Indians, go back to India. Everybody, go back, get back. So we put this to our Native brothers and sisters, and they said, well, no, you guys can stay, but let's rethink how we organize it here. So that's their wisdom. And one of the wisdoms from the Iroquois Confederacy that I'll give you as context is that one of the ways that they organize themselves is that if you wanted to go to war, you had to go to the Council of Grandmothers. Like, there's some deep wisdom in having to make certain decisions go through certain elders. And that is not anti-ethical to the Islamic tradition at all, right? There's a orientation around tradition and history that we completely erased in the colonial project. So I think that my first thought has always been like, go back to where you're from, but also remembering that our Native folks and the elders that are on the land now in the places that have been colonized, they may have other insight. Now that's deep though, thinking about other spaces, particularly in the Caribbean, where they've wiped out the Native communities and the people. And so the Black tradition is what is left and remaining of that tradition. And so now, as the people of African descent, Maroons and other places, people that liberated their lands like in Haiti, right? Because to me, the beginning of an environmental movement, the beginning of a movement around the relationship with the planet begins with liberation movements. It begins with the Haitian Black folks kicking the French out. It begins with folks in Indonesia kicking out everybody, the British. That's the beginning of an environmental movement. The people, and check this, the people in 1918 that were single digits, that were children, like my children are single digits. Those people grew up and liberated their countries. So we might be right now raising a generation of revolutionaries that will liberate, but also not make the same, God willing, not make the same mistakes of capitalism as people in the past, and do some radical cooperation and radical reconnecting with the land, like Sister Rabia and Brother Freedom.
Let's bring Freedom in. Freedom, did you have anything to add to that? You're muted, Freedom.
Apologies, sorry. Yeah, yeah, it was a really good question. I think with myself, you know what? A lot of this Black people over here in the UK, we actually don't realize how much history there is here in the UK, you know? You get me? That's really relevant to us as Black people. You understand me? I'll give you an example. I run this other group. It's a community group called Educate Global, yeah? And we do a walk every single year, or try to, every single year, which is about 7 miles. And the reason why it's about 7 miles is because we walk from a small village on the outskirts of Leicestershire, which is called Rothley. Now, anyone who's not familiar with Rothley, you'll probably be familiar with the story of Madeleine McCann, young girl who went missing from Portugal. Yeah, okay. So Madeleine McCann was from Rothley. That's what Rothley's famous for. It's famous for Madeleine McCann. But a lot of people, both Black and white and in between, actually don't know that Rothley is where the Abolition Act to end the trading of African slaves here in the UK was actually formulated and put together by William Wilberforce and Thomas Babington. So everyone's familiar with William Wilberforce, but no one's familiar with Thomas Babington. Thomas Babington was William Wilberforce's right-hand man, okay? And together they formulated the Abolition Act that ended the trading of African slaves back in 1806, if I'm correct. Okay, so a lot of people don't know that. Now, 2 miles from Rothley, Rothley's 7 miles away, but 2 miles from Rothley, in another small village called Wanlip, there's an Ethiopian prince who's been buried at a church there since 1836. You know what I mean? And that's just 2 relevant bits of information right on my doorstep. And there's a lot more interesting bits of information like that about us and our connection to this country around the country. You know what I mean? So in terms of how do I feel in terms of living over here, I see myself as living over here as creating new history. You know, again, my dad was a revolutionary. He was a pioneer in many different ways for many different things. So I'm inspired by what he did. I'm inspired by what I'm creating right now. And then again, you know, I look at myself as a global citizen. So I see myself as African, as from the UK, from the Caribbean. So again, when I went to the Caribbean at 14 and I learned about Betty's Hope, Slave Plantation, Nelson's Dockyard, which is where all of the people came when they brought slaves to the island and stuff like that. When I learned about the history of the island, it made me feel much more wholesome. I finished secondary school in the Caribbean, and my history over there was different from the history over here. Whereas over here, I'm learning about the Victorians. Over there, I'm learning about the Maroons and Harriet Tubman and Toussaint Louverture. So I felt much more wholesome. You know what I mean? So again, I see myself as a global citizen anyway. I don't really think I'm feeling inferior to my brother in America, who might have a lot more in terms of experience and knowledge of our history and so on. Or my sisters from Africa. I don't feel any kind of way at all. I just know that I just need to hit certain places. Like I need to make it to Africa. I've not been there yet. You know what I mean? I've been to New York, which was okay. Certainly want to go to Africa, 100%. So yeah, that's me anyway.
Thank you. So just to let everyone know that we are going to aim to end at 9:15. I can't believe the time has gone so quickly. We've literally got 10 minutes and we've just touched, we haven't even got into the discussion, but we are going to finish at 10:15. I just want to quickly go to the comments that some of you have been making and just see if we can put that to our speakers, if that's okay. So Rachel has asked, how do you go about minimizing waste with 5 independent, crazy small people? So I think this will be great to hear from everyone, even if it's just a short answer, something very practical. Just any advice in regards to minimizing waste with in regards to a family and having children.
I'll throw out that I'm a firm believer in composting, and we have some composting programs here in New York. And so there's like a people that do it on their own at community gardens. There's also a citywide system that picks up compost. And a lot of times people say, well, how do you deal with compost in an urban, in a building, in an apartment or flat? We often would freeze our compost. So we would put any kind of organic matter into the freezer, so it gets super, so anyway, your trash becomes a lot cleaner on the back end. So I'm a big proponent of composting to get things out of the system.
Cool. Thank you, Rabia.
Yeah, I think composting is a very easier way to kind of reduce that waste, and also food waste, as in like how much is being prepared for the family, and how much is being given to each one of the kids. But yeah, something really small. Don't make this ever into a burden upon you, because then it won't be sustainable and you won't be able to continue it. So bismillah, whatever's easier.
And Freedom.
Back what 2 previous speakers have just basically said. It might be difficult if you don't know how to compost. One thing what was top of my mind was, I think wherever possible, we should all have allotments. Then that gives you a reason to compost. You know what I mean? So if you're living in a city, if you have any opportunity, go to council, whatever, find out if there's any allotment spaces. And if you could, get a piece of land where you could grow your own potatoes or tomatoes or vegetables, whatever, and then, bam, composting with the reason to actually compost, And if you need manure and stuff, any question, we've got plenty. We'll give you loads.
Thank you. I think Freedom might have frozen. But yeah, I think thank you for that. I know Corey has said, Corey, who's at Green Ramadan, lovely to see you, Corey. She said, model the behavior you want to see. If you give them throwaway stuff, they will have practice of throwing away stuff. If you give them reusables, they will reuse them. And there's lots more. I just want to also, it is the month of Rabi al-Awwal, and so it is the month of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I really would love to hear from everyone just a little bit, because I think everyone's kind of spoken about it already in regards to obviously what the Quran says about our faith, but it would be lovely to hear in regards to the Prophet as an example for the work that you do. So specifically, obviously, Freedom with the horses, Rabia, with the retreats and Sidi Ibrahim, even with a lot of the policy making and things like that. How has your faith impacted your work? And specifically looking at the example of the Prophet, are there any sayings or are there any traits that has inspired your work? Should we go to Sidi Ibrahim first?
Yeah, Bismillah. The prophetic example has always been to leave people better than you found them. So any time you read about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, anyone who encountered him or met him or any kind of interaction was really like breathtaking for that person, and it was a really important moment in their life. And I think that's the way we need to approach all of the work we do. I used to do a lot of outdoor camping and hiking stuff, and the whole principle is leave a place better than you found it. Leave no trace. Right, you should walk softly on the earth. And Harriet Tubman, who was the great liberator of Black Americans, she was famous for walking through the forest barefoot without making a sound. She was sort of walking in this sort of like complete way where she was in. I theorize that she was a Sufi saint, and that she was a deep thinker when she was in these famous walks. But that's just my gut on it. I just think that we have an incredible way to be with and sort of be in concert with nature. that we haven't even really tapped into.
Yeah, thank you. Freedom, is there anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Horses being so important in Islam have always driven my passion to work with them and make something extraordinary happen with them. They themselves are my motivation. Until you are around these majestic creatures and you interact with them, you really don't know the kind of the power that they have and the aura. Their aura is magnificent. And then when you start riding and when you connect with the horse, your whole balance and your whole aura is merging together, and that energy, that synergy is crazy. It's really, really crazy. So yeah, I've got two examples. I'll give you one. So it's a sunnah, and it was narrated by Abu Dar, who said, the Messenger of Allah said, there is no Arabian horse, but it is allowed to offer 2 supplications every sahar, end of the night. O Allah, you have caused me to be owned by whoever you wanted among the sons of Adam, and you have made me belong to him. Make me the dearest of his family and wealth to him, or amongst the dearest of his family and wealth to him. And I found that very inspiring. You know, again, you know, I only received that particular narration quite recently from another Muslim brother, friend of mine, who's also into horses and doing fantastic things in Gloucestershire. But again, it's things like this that really inspire me, you know, to keep doing what I'm doing. Another one, the Messenger of Allah, subhanallah, 1400 years ago. See, there's many, particularly, you know, in terms of white privilege, right? They try and teach you about all of these super famous horse people that we're supposed to learn from. Yeah. Now, I don't look up to many of them because representation matters to me. Yeah. I learned everything in the Caribbean about horses. England, they teach me nothing about horses. So I don't really look to no one over here about them, right? I'm not trying to be ignorant, but I'm just trying to give an example that before any of these white privileged horse owner people were trying to teach anyone anything, the Messenger of Allah, Subhanallah, 1400 years ago, was reported to have wiped his sleeve across the forehead of horses. The reason he'd done that was because he said, and is reported to have said, gentleness enhances everything it touches, whereas harshness stains everything it touches. And he made that reference in relation to a camel owner who was really, really harsh with his camel, used to treat it really, really bad. So he literally, you know, made that statement. And it's absolutely correct because, again, you know, I find that it's through love, empathy, rather than whipping or treating it really mean, that allows you to build a fantastic relationship and do fantastic works. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I know, Rabia, I'd love to hear your answer as well. I am aware of the time. We are going to have, before I come to you, Rabia, for the answer, we are going to probably do one more question and then we will close for those, inshallah, that need to leave. So I'm going to come to Rabia with that same question. Thank you so much, Freedom. What was the question? It was about the prophetic.
Does anything from the Prophet, peace be upon him, that's impactful works? Yeah,
thank you. Go for it, Rabia.
I mean, I don't know, man. I kind of got a bit carried. I was too much into what Freedom was saying. I'm just thinking about horses. So I can only think. This is not the example I was going to say, but now that's all I can think of. And just to kind of back up what Freedom is saying, 100% about horses, and it just reminds me, and I know this is not from the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but it's definitely an experience that was inspired by the way the Prophet ﷺ was with animals. One of the retreats we took the ladies on was opposite a horse sanctuary. And so we had so many horses there. Some of them were kind of old racing horses that, the owners didn't want to be put down. We had really blind horses. One of them actually didn't have an eye, and they're all different types of horses in this horse sanctuary. And every morning we would go out and we would go and sing to them, and we would do dhikr with them. And I kid you not, every time we would do dhikr with these horses, there was this serenity that kind of came over them, and then you felt calm because they were so calm. And then there's this big majestic feeling about them, and as you're doing the dhikr, it's almost like they're just keep it going, keep doing that dhikr. So it just reminded me of that as you were saying that, Brother Freedom. And I think that's what it reminds me of the way the Prophet ﷺ was with animals and with trees, and how he embraced trees. And that's all I have to say. I'll add to that.
Yeah. Thank you, Robbie. And I know we've got some comments in regards to Rian's just said one of the Prophet's companions nickname, Abu Huraira, father of cats. I think we are going to have to end with just one final question. And I'm going to put this question, this is from Sidi Ahmed, which I think is a really important question. He says, often I feel like the Green Deen movement attracts more women than men. What's your advice on reaching out to young men? Would like to hear everyone's thoughts. So should we start with Rabia, who's not a man? But we'll just start with Rabia, then we'll go to Sidi Ibrahim and then Freedom.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I don't know. This is actually one. I think it's. I really thank you so much for that question, Sidi Ahmed. I don't know, and that's the honest truth. And one of the things I can definitely say is when we started this out, we wanted it to kind of be for men and for women, and we kind of had that invitation open to everybody. But we can comfortably stay at majority of our events, and I think even if we did a quick poll here now, I feel pretty certain that maybe there would still be more women, and I feel like this is for me personally, I feel like there's my reason for that is that I do feel like not because the men within the community are not interested, but this is just from my experience. There's two reasons why I feel like this movement attracts more females. Number one, I'm very aware of a lot of the female, as women, we are more cyclical in nature, which means we are a little bit more easier for us to kind of connect to nature, and we have that access and that inclination towards nature. And on the other side, and this is a bit more, perhaps I might get in trouble for saying this, but I also feel like a lot of the Green Deen movement work that is being done is quite, from my experience, quite a lot of humble work that's being done. And from my experience, I know Sakina's face is like, what? But from my experience, I feel like sometimes the men in our communities prefer to be doing work that requires more leadership. If there's leadership opportunities, if there's an opportunity to excel, if there's an opportunity to speak, if there's an opportunity to be heard, and please forgive me, Sidi Ibrahim and Brother Freedom, I'm not throwing shade at either one of you, but it's this thing, that's one thing that we've noticed within the movement, right? We've noticed that when it comes to doing a lot of the behind the scenes nitty gritty work on the ground and finding places to kind of connect to nature in that respect, we find that a lot more of our brothers are happy to kind of do more external work, if that makes sense. Is that making sense? Yeah, and that's not me being shady, but it's just, that's what I think. That's why I think what we do as a Green Deen movement, that's why I think it attracts more women. I think if we were kind of to do camping and or something a bit more kind of external in that aspect, I feel like we could potentially attract more men. But I think to answer the question, probably best for the brothers to answer that question.
Come to have the question for all your camping, mate. Come down here. Oh,
how's the setup? Gotta get all the sisters on the horses, man. Gotta bring it all, like everybody's gotta get on the horse. I think I'll throw in that I think I remember one of my first Green Deen talks, I went to a masjid somewhere in like the South, I think it was like Kentucky or something. And I went to some uncles and they were joking about all this stuff. They weren't taking it seriously. That was what it boiled down to, right? They were like, and these are uncles. So I don't know, the young men, it's an interesting thing to think about. What is going to sort of be the trigger for them to make them sort of be more engaged? I think the stuff that I've thought about a lot has been like the things that have connected with people in the United States, like Dawood Yassin. Are you familiar with Dawood Yassin? Would Get Your Own Halal, where he feeds his family off of what he hunts with his bow. There's a brother there's a whole like sort of extreme backpacking and sort of like back to nature and get your skills up type of crew, and that is a whole thing that would be huge. His brother Tariq Azim, who's actually a well-known fitness expert, and he just did like a 12-day backpacking and horse riding trip in the West, like in Montana somewhere. And he's deeply, so I think that physical and visceral thing is really important, but also just like, going into like just going to sight the moon. And that is something that people should be doing every month as a group and as a community in nature, or wherever there's a vista, is something that is really important. And I think that would be part of community building, bringing people together. So there's a lot of ideas. I mean, I have a ton of ideas. So when you guys are starting to brainstorm, let me get in the loop, and we can sort of think through some ideas. Yeah, I mean, and if brothers have a hard time realizing that there's a bunch of amazing sisters part of an activity, they need to be slapped upside the head also, because they didn't recognize that there's a healthy halal way to interact with some beautiful women, and that's an incredible opportunity for brothers to kind of let their, just sort of get a little bit of like focused time connecting with a human being about something that you have something in common on, is a real blessing. And it's not, I think in Islam we need some of these like third spaces to connect with each other, that's not in like a prescribed Islamic way, but is also connecting in a halal way with someone of the opposite gender, that you can do it in a healthy way to get to know each other.
Thank you so much. Freedom, did you want to add to that before we close?
Well, just to say, it's the first time that I've engaged with Green Deen Tribe, and I think it's great. Yeah, I love what your sisters is doing, and any brothers involved also. I love what you're doing. Some of my audience that heard that I was going to be on this, they got super excited. So you guys are very popular. I know that. Down here in Leicester in particular, you're very popular. Yeah. But I mean, in terms of the guys getting involved and stuff, guys, man, just get involved in the thing. I don't understand, you know what I mean? It's like, you get me? It's up to them. I'm down with the sisters, them, you get me? So man, them just need to just step up, you get me? Get involved. You know what I mean? Sometimes I think that, us as Muslims, sometimes we do things too prehistoric kind of thing, man. We need to step up, man. You get me? And just embrace. You know what I mean? We're from so many different cultures and whatnot, but listen, man, put Islam in front of everything and just get involved in the thing. I think maybe men are just more into the physical side rather than the talking side. But we need to let that go, man. You know what I mean? Start talking, start opening up, start getting involved in the debates and supporting the sisters in the work that they do. And the same with the sisters, you know what I mean? Vice versa. But hey, where we're based at the minute is 50 acres. So anytime you want to come down and do some camping, some horseback riding, come through, man, because we're right here. You know what I mean? That's just the country, so yeah, man. I take all your horse riding. Come.
Yeah, we're coming. Bismillah. Honestly, we are coming. I'm telling you, I don't know what's going on with this lockdown, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. We are coming. You've said it. And we need that as a soundbite, honestly. Brothers, get involved.
Let's go.
I
love it. Thank you so much.
Bless. Thank you so much. Yeah, we definitely need to quote that. Just as Brother Freedom said, get involved with the thing, and that's it. We are going to close now. Thank you so much to all of our guests. Thank you so much to everyone that's attended. If you want to hear more from the Green Deen tribe, do follow us on Instagram at greendeen_tribe. If you would like to hear more from Sidi Ibrahim and the work that he's doing, please do follow him on social media at Brooklyn Bedouin. Inshallah, our admin, Sarah, will be putting details in the chat. And if you want to know more about Freedom and his school, please do follow him on Instagram at Urban Equest, if I remember that correctly. But Sarah will be putting that into the chat. Just before we close with a dua, inshallah, just some short final words from each of you. We'll go to Sidi Ibrahim first, if that's okay.
Yeah, I just put in the chat a link to an op-ed that I published in the United States last week or 2 weeks ago. Just basically an agenda for how to stop climate change. It's something that's scalable, that you can go from individual all the way to the community level. And it's basically that we need to decarbonize everything. We need to ban all single-use plastics. We need to save what's left in the natural world, and we need to heal scarred lands. And my last point here was we need to get involved, but I also think we need to decolonize our minds, and that's where it all starts. Bismillah. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, decolonize our mind. Let's go to Freedom. Is there any final words?
Just to say thank you very much for inviting me. I've absolutely enjoyed it. Listening to Brother Ibrahim and Sister Rabia, you're all doing marvelous work also. And it's a shame that it wasn't in the daytime or wasn't at the stables, because I would have involved the horses. You would have seen them. You know what I mean? Get me back on here, and I'll make sure that the horses is on the Zoom too. There you go. But yeah, by all means, we have also a YouTube channel, so check us out in terms of our YouTube channel and all the great things we've been doing. Insta, we're on Twitter. And again, my autobiography, From the Hood to Horses, is available on Amazon. Or just get in touch direct. We can sort something out. So thank you very much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. And peace, blessings for everything else that you do. And certainly let me know everything else that you do.
Bless. Thank you so much, Freedom. We definitely will take you up on that offer and come visit you in Leicester, inshallah. So, Rabi, is there any final words?
No, just to echo, just abundant gratitude. Really, it's been such a beautiful opportunity to have this conversation, particularly with the different aspects that we're coming from. And I'm hoping that inshallah we can continue such conversations. And just as a last word, I will say, like, as it is the month of Rabi al-Awwal, I really felt this is a really beautiful way of time to really honor bringing back sunnahs of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And so whether that's walking out barefoot as a sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, or making dua in the rain, which we're going to get a lot of rain, just to make those du'as with the intention of, one, connecting to nature, and also connecting to the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Thank you so much on behalf of the tribe. Just to say a huge thank you to Sidi Ahmed, who opened the recitation, opened the Zoom session with a beautiful recitation. Thank you so much, Sidi Ahmed. Thank you to Rabia from Green Deen Tribe. Thank you to Sidi Ibrahim and to Sidi Freedom as well. And thank you to everyone for just being here. I do apologize that we weren't able to read out everyone's questions and comments, but I know our guests have been reading, and I've also been reading. And I pray that inshallah this is a session that will inspire us to go out and be in nature. This one, I'm just going to check if there's any last messages that I haven't, if I need to mention anything. We do need to do part 2, and I hope, I would love to do part 2. Either we'll come to Leicester or we'll come to New York, and we'll do part 2 in the flesh, inshallah. Or you can come to East London. We can do that. All right. So we are going to end. We're going to end with Al-Fatiha, inshallah, if that's okay. If Sidi Ahmed is still around, it would be amazing to end with Al-Fatiha, so that inshallah this session is an opening for much more. We're not going to be closing this conversation, but it's actually a starter and an opening for many more conversations, but also much more action. Is Sidi Ahmed around?
Yeah, I'm here. Do you just want me to read Surah Al-Fatiha?
Yes, please. That'd be amazing.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين